Welcome to the new Bizz Buzz Show. My name is Leon Thomas. Here at the new Bizz Buzz Show, we give new businesses an opportunity to tell everyone about them to help create buzz about what they're doing. Here we go. Welcome again to the new Bizz Buzz Show. My name is Leon Thomas, and tonight we have a special guest. His name is Matthew Milo. Matthew has created a nonprofit that's going to help a lot of people. A lot of people are going to be helped by Matthew's nonprofit. And here today to interview him is my co-host, Brooke Young. Brooke and Matthew, how are you? Brooke, how's it going?
Going great. The weather was so much better today, and that's what I really love. There wasn't so much snow. My dog didn't get so wet when he walked outside. So altogether, a much better weather than typical.
Good deal, Matthew. It's nice to have you with us. Thanks for spending time with us tonight here on New Bizz Buzz.
It is excellent to be here, and it's a pleasure to get to talk about what we're doing. So I'm just happy to be here in general.
All right, I'm going to step away. You guys go ahead and have a great conversation.
It's always hard to condense things down, and I feel it's one of the hardest things you can do, especially when you have a unique life story like you have and like I have. So how would you describe yourself in 30 seconds if you had to do that, or just give a brief overview?
Myself in 30 seconds. Well, I'd say life finds ways to test us all and teach us who we are supposed to be in various ways. And I would say that I'm someone who has been tested and found myself to be in a certain avenue of life of wanting to help people. So I find myself to be a hard worker and someone who just feels at their core dedicated to trying to make everyone's lives a little bit better, just dependent on the time that we have here.
Okay, I firstly love that, and that's one of my two core values is firstly to create meaningful art and meaningful things, but then secondly, more relevant to you is the service aspect. And I feel that so many of us in our contemporary society have really lost the aspect and the need and the inclination to serve people and to really just be generous and to be selfless with your time. How did you kind of come upon that as a realization for who you are?
Well, I was sort of navigating the throes of my own life, and at a young age I was sort of blessed and cursed to be given a cancer diagnosis at the age of 19. So I was pretty much living my own life on my own terms at that point. I wasn't really focused on service or focused on how my life figured into the bigger picture of things. But as I sort of went through my journey and saw both my own struggles and the struggles of those around me, and the not only the pain but the dedication around the people and the people around me, it sort of showed me that there was a lot of work to be done in different ways and shapes and forms and throughout life, and that in my specific experience with cancer, that there was a lot of room and a lot of work to be done and a lot of progress that could be made. So as my health sort of rebounded, I felt very lucky as a result of the struggles I went through, and I sort of wanted to give back in the area that I knew, which just ended up being those areas of cancer survivorship.
Wow. And, like you said, so many 19-year-olds and so many teenagers have this mentality where it could never happen to me, this very invincible mentality, and that could never happen to them. Can you talk a little bit about your mentality when you knew that was a reality in your life, and really when that set in? Because so many of us have a denial period, or we have a period where we feel that it's not real for so many different things. I'm sure you went through that, but when the reality actually happens.
Absolutely. I was about 19 years old or so. I just been my birthday. And I was actually a personal trainer at the time. So not only was I in a young, invincible mindset, I foolhardily thought myself above the realm of mortal illness. And I literally, in my head, I had this monologue of cancer is a bad thing that happens to other people. But, it never in my mind or life occurred to me that that was something that could easily happen to me.
And I don't think any of us really do. I think so many of us pass by this mindset that it could never happen to us, but it happens to people we know, people in our
Yeah.
community, but not us personally.
And you hear about it on the news, and you hear about
Mhm.
relatives, and it's always sad.
It's very removed from yourself, a very fantastical, just a different alternate reality almost is the way that so many people approach it.
And especially when you're young, focused on living life to the extent, being an American youth that was getting into college, getting into working and doing other things and this, that, and the other. And the last thing on my mind was my physical health, let alone my own mortality. So that sort of plopped that right on the plate at 19, and it removed that veil of invincibility. And that sort of gave me a lot of time to sit there and reassess what my life was, what it meant to me, and what it was going to be, both while I was here and after. So, that that veil of
It's a big
invincibility.
idea. It's a huge idea, but I think it's important. I think
Mhm.
as a society, we struggle to talk about mortality and we struggle to talk about illness and disease. But if we don't have tough conversations, we can never really help those that are going through it. We can never show compassion towards those
Yeah,
people. We can never connect with them in a meaningful way because we're too busy being scared talking about it.
yeah.
We're too scared to say the wrong thing. And that's something that I've always felt is, what do you say? What's the right thing to say? But the
And I
wrong
always
thing to
have
say is
people
nothing.
approach me, and they're always like, "Oh, I don't want to offend you. I don't want to pick at it, or I don't want to ask too much." And I'm like, "No, it's like talking about my family or talking about anything else to me. I want it to be just another aspect of life. I want to remove the stigma of, it's something bad or taboo or scary or something that has to be negative or permanent or, end of life situation, talk about it in a sheerly positive light where it's something to be overcome. And, there is tremendous room for growth and prognosis and for life to continue both during and after treatment. So there's a part of what I want to do with this foundation is address, sort of that negative stigma that sort of surrounds these kind of things, and address the positives that really come out of something when someone's faced in a situation where your life comes on the table, and you're forced to do some grim calculus.
Right. And, you don't really think about it. You're not a critical thinker up until you really have to be. But there is a really negative stigma in terms of what you see on the news is always very much a tearful, very fantasticized, just very larger than life stories. But you never hear about the everyday stories of it happening to someone.
Yeah.
And by removing the stigma, it helps you not feel so alone. And that's part of the big problem, I feel, is the isolation aspect. When you feel alone because they never show people like you struggling. And when in reality, there were probably tons of young adults struggling all across the world at the same time as you, but no one publicized their stories and no one cared to remove the stigma to really create a community. And there's just not enough community within it.
Yeah. And there's people with a common plight fighting alone. And that's, to me, that's as much of a tragedy as it is avoidable. And a part of what I want to do is connect these people and not only reach them individually from a singular point of assistance, but to also connect them to each other and to the world around them.
Right. And social media a
Because
big part of that for you? Because I know social media connects us.
Social media is enormous. And we're all blessed to exist in this day and age where we're able to connect to each other so easily. I can reach out to someone through Facebook groups to a cancer survivor in Bangkok and talk to them about, what's going to happen on their first doctor's appointment, or I can give advice to someone in UK about how their mom could successfully go through chemo a little bit more comfortable. Real conversations happening through social media is really what allows us to hopefully reach out to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me kind of the name and the brief overview?
The name of it is the Milo Foundation. We're a nonprofit incorporated in Washington, D.C., and we operate on a sort of a three-tier basis of doing direct assistance to cancer survivors, legislative initiatives, and also educational initiatives as well. So we sort of operate in three different fields, trying to reach out and help young adult cancer survivors, whether it be directly assisting them throughout their treatments and getting them the money and the help and the attention that they need, or if it's speaking with insurance companies and legislative officials about making progress in ways that are meaningful for cancer survivors in the areas that are miring them throughout their treatments, or if it's just, we're going to be creating pamphlets, educational brochures, and, public outreach initiatives of people to, get a conversation going about cancer, to make it not a doom and gloom part of life, but something that gets discussed and something that helps, hopefully what is always the goal is to aid in early detection and treatment, which will lead to greater prognosis overall for people, both people actively undergoing treatment and, people in the future.
I think there's not enough emphasis placed outside of the traditional K-12 education, but there's so much to be educated about, and there's so many different topics to be educated about outside of that, from personal finance to being educated about how to communicate with other people. And that's where there's so many other organizations that really fit in, because our school systems don't do the most wonderful job of preparing you for real life and real world situations through providing that education. And oftentimes it has to come from outside sources, just because they don't want to touch those hard topics. But if
Yeah.
kids and if young people are never educated, there can never really be a lot of meaningful change that happens mentally, because so much of what kids learn is ingrained in them from a very young age. And if you start
Yeah.
destigmatizing it very young, it's going to help out a lot when they get older, when they meet someone, when they come upon a hard situation.
Yeah. Removing that fear to both discuss it, think about it, and deal with it, whether it be personally or community wise. And, sort of like you said, removing that stigma from a young age, removing it from being cancer is a death sentence to, cancer is a discussion to be had. Cancer is it's a malady to be treated like anything else. And I think throughout these educational initiatives, there's a lot of room to be had in, as you said, taking it outside of the K-12 area, taking it to young adults, and there's so many, like you said, through social media, there's so many easy ways to put quick, effective reminders into people's lives where real positive impacts can be made on people, because the consequence of early detection is huge. And
right, and even a 20-second little post can sometimes be all someone needs to really flip that switch in their brain and really spark that thought or that conversation that they can continue on. But unless someone really turns the light bulb on or turns the light switch on, it's hard to ever think of it, because we live in an instant gratification society. So we're flipping through our Instagram,
a very rapidly moving
we're
society
looking at
too.
all of these happy people, and we're not really seeing a lot of meaningful content that helps us understand, grow, learn, serve other people better, connect with people better. So when we come upon something like that, it's almost a little bit of a shock to our faith. Like, what is this?
It's I see a lot of good intention this day and age between, like, the NFL with the Susan G. Komen thing, and there's no shortage of positive energy when it comes to wanting to deal with cancer. But when it comes to how does cancer factor into my personal life, people will get kind of blasé about it, or they don't want to touch it. And we're hoping to, part of what we want to do is normalize that a bit. Even aside from these educational initiatives, part of the legislative thing is going to be advocating for the normalcy and subsidization of cancer screenings for people, on Medicare.
It should be an everyday thing. I mean,
Yeah,
just gonna throw it in there.
even if it was just once a year when you get your physical or something like that. Some form of first line of defense to put it reasonably and rationally into people's lives in a way that would have huge effects coming back. If you had everyone getting screened once a year, your late stage cancer diagnosis would go through the floor as people became more aware. So that's something on the table for us that we're working with, aside from just, educating people about the importance of screenings, and then also advocating to get that reasonably into their hands, whether they can afford it or not.
And that has to be a huge task. I mean, talk about an undertaking.
Dealing with insurance companies on a good day is hard enough, but asking them to cover something that, luckily, it's a cheap quick and easy blood work thing. So it's not painful for the person per se, but to work with legislation and whatnot, it's no small task. But we have a couple people in our corner who we can talk to, who we're going to try to put in some footwork, because things ride through on bills all the time, and that would be our goal, is to slip and work something in our favor for the court, for the cancer survivors' favor, into the workings that go on already.
And that's amazing too. And just like you said about those late stage rates, they would really fall onto the floor because so many people too have a family history
Yes.
of all having a similar thing. And so many people ignore that until their their late 30s, their mid 40s, or even their early 50s, assuming that it could never happen before then. What if you really started working on that at a younger age? For example, if I knew that my family had something genetically, I would probably test myself and I would really, educate myself on that particular type of cancer. I would educate myself on that. And of course, I would get tested, as you mentioned. But so many people fail to do that. And it's really 3 simple steps or 4 simple steps. But we make
Yeah.
it so much harder than it is.
And that would be that's part of the task at hand, is making it something that, as I said, it reasonably and rationally falls into the realm of life. So something that is just comfortable, it's there, it's like going to get your physical.
Right, and to bite-size information too, so that it's not tons of numbers and tons of graphs and tons of letters, but something that's relatable and something that's personal and something that can be digested by a lot of different age groups and not really as targeted as much as widespread.
Yeah.
Getting
like
all the generations involved is super crucial too, not just the people at risk, but people that are young as well.
Yes, because if you have people who are aware and savvy of it as it is, then when these stage 1 diagnoses come up and they pop up, if they're caught in their early stages, it's a very survivable thing. It removes the reality where, we have late stage diagnoses and, options are limited. And that's the point that I want to help remove people away from. That's what we're trying to, through our education and legislation, we're trying to save people from getting to that point. Because that's not a very, it's, people can fight as hard as they want, but I would much rather create a world where we can get people in that early stage where we're talking, 50, 60-year survivorship, as opposed to people having to go through what I went through, where, the warning signs are in your face for a year or two and it gets ignored until it's stage 3, stage 4. We're talking years of chemo and surgery, and it's painful, and it's, we want to avoid that. So I think sort of what we're here to do is a huge factor in stopping things before they hit that point.
And like you said, so much could be avoided. For example, my grandpa had cancer and he did pass away from cancer about 2.5 years ago. He went through just a lot of issues on the medical side that were considered fluke issues, but they were things that really should have been addressed and should have been addressed in his surgeries and different things. And there was a lot of odd issues that popped up with him. And he did eventually pass away from cancer that did spread and metastasize and all of that fun stuff. But you oftentimes wonder, because he had throat cancer and his vocal tone actually changed much before he ever got that diagnosis. And you wonder if that would have been caught, would the result be different?
Yeah, I am sorry to hear that as well.
Yeah, well, you wonder that about so many people. If something was caught, would this result
that's
be
all
different?
too common
I
a
don't
story.
think our doctors and our medical professionals are wonderful, but I don't think our doctors are pushing prevention as much as they treat us. We got to push a healthy eating. We got to push movement. We got to push sleeping. We got to push being kind to ourselves and being positive towards ourselves. We got to really dig into healthy habits before we get really, really deep down. And it sounds like that's what you're doing too.
Yeah, that's one of the many many facets of the educational portion of things is, it starts, it's a total side tangent, but it starts with what you eat, and it starts with what you put in. You put good in and you get good out. But it is a many-factored beast when you're talking about dealing with cancer, trying to prevent it, whether it be healthy eating, positive mental thinking, treatment, finances, doctors, and not to mention the cancer world is inundated. So it's never just you fighting in there. It's you in a limited time slot, duking it out with all the other survivors too. So it's difficult because your doctor, as well-meaning as your whole team may be, they only have so much time. So to provide ancillary educational materials is part of what we want to do to help people who are looking for more. And you keep mentioning it, and someone said it, another survivor mentioned it a long time ago, and they had a poster posted up in the work bathroom. It said, the signs of cancer whisper to you silently, and you have to pay attention. You were alluding to it with your grandfather. It happened to me. I've seen it happen to many people as well. It starts small and it starts quiet, but it does speak to you. So part of what we would want to do, putting it sort of on the head, is teaching people how to listen.
I love that. Is there anything else you want to
Hmm?
add? Is there anything else you want to add? Just as a final, I love that little wrap-up. Thought there's any other wrap-up?
No, I feel pretty good. If anyone were to want to check us out, we are on Facebook, and we do have a website as well. And we do have an email, milo.foundation.outreach@gmail.com, and we are always here and welcome to talk.
Okay, well, I'm going to send it over.
Thank you.
Matthew, Brooke, thank you. Matthew, give us that contact information again if someone wants to get in touch with you to learn more about the foundation or to learn how they can donate. Give us all of that contact again, please.
So we do exist on Facebook. Just search the Milo Foundation and we will pop up. That has a link to our other website. I believe we have an Instagram in the works. And we also have a Gmail that I personally respond to. It's milo.foundation.outreach@gmail.com. And any questions, inquiries, anything you just want to talk, I am there.
Okay, great. Thank you. And it's interesting when we talk about early screening, early prevention. I had a colonoscopy, and I remember my first one, and I was all worried about it. And, you give you all this stuff to drink and all that, and everybody makes it sound a lot worse than it really was. I actually did a video moments after being in the recovery room to help everyone see that it's not that bad.
Hey folks, this is Leon the trainer. Listen, today I just had a colonoscopy. I've been in the recovery room for like 3 minutes. This is simple stuff. You take a lot of prep liquid the day before to make sure your colon's clean. I came into the hospital, they put an IV in me, asked me a bunch of questions, rolled me in, the nicest people ever. I got it done at Mercy Hospital in Baltimore. The lady says to me, "Okay, Leon, I have the IV going. It's going to knock you out." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, sure. You're going to knock me out. Yeah, right." Next thing I know, I'm dreaming and I wake up. "Okay, Leon, you're done." I am in no pain at all. If you're at the age and you should have a colonoscopy, you need to get this done. You have questions or a family member has questions about the whole prep and procedure. You send me a message on Facebook. Find me on Twitter @Leon the Trainer. This colonoscopy deal, the prep was nothing, the procedure's nothing.
And also, on one of my favorite television shows, it's called The Neighborhood. I don't know if you watch it. It's called The Neighborhood. It comes on CBS Monday nights at 8 o'clock on CBS. The two characters, Calvin and David, Calvin did not want to get his colonoscopy last week during last week's episode. And then he ended up getting it, and it brought attention to the importance of early prevention. So I'm sure many people are going to benefit from what you are doing, spreading around that education. And that's going to be a big win. And that's the big win for everybody. So thank you again, Matthew.
Well, it is. That's our goal. We're here to help people.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew, for being a guest on the new
absolutely.
Bizz Buzz. We appreciate you having us. Folks, next week on the new Bizz Buzz, we're going to have someone from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. His name is Jacques Abreu. Jacques has started a unique retreat setting where you actually have 6 hours of silence doing a retreat, and folks are loving it. We're going to hear from Jacques next week. Again, thank you to our host, Brooke Young. Thank you, Matthew. This is the new Business Buzz Show. Here we go.